What happens if a parent doesn't look after the baby when they wake up in the middle of the night? The baby would starve. They have to eat every couple hours in the beginning. The baby would get a very nasty rash. They need a new diaper every few hours or the urine and poo burns their skin. I've seen babies in the burn unit due to severe infected diaper rash that literally ate off their skin. They would be at risk for developmental issues that cry, response, thing is super important for the baby's development. Babies in orphanages back in the day didn't cry, ever, because they knew nobody was coming. And these kids grew up into people that struggled with bonding and relationships. Reactive attachment disorder is a thing. Basically, you can't just let the baby cry and go back to sleep. The sound is designed to make that impossible. We're biologically wired to be annoyed, want to respond to that sound. If you could, it would be very unsafe damaging for the baby as described above. Pretty hard to sleep through a baby crying in the night. Crying is the baby's survival mechanism, and it is pretty effective at getting the child the attention it needs. Also for moms, crying can stimulate milk flow, so often the mom of a new baby will want to get up to feed the baby. Others had answered your question perfectly, but I think it's important to note that babies wake up in the middle of the night for longer than a few months. I'd always check on the baby, because I'd be worried about SIDS. That is sudden infant death syndrome. They can smother if lying on their stomach. If you do this as a parent, you need professional help. Hell, my last puppy needed to be toileted and cuddled every 3 hours initially, and I did so happily and willingly. They need to eat every 2 hours for the first couple of months. Their skin is also incredibly sensitive and will develop a diaper rash if they aren't changed every time they go. If the rash is allowed to progress instead of treated, their skin will break down, making a large open wound. This is why parental leave from work is so incredibly important. You ideally take the child care duties in shifts. If breastfeeding, mom will still have to wake to latch the baby every 2 hours, but the other parent can supervise so she can nod off and take the baby for burping, soothing, changing, and putting back to sleep. The baby will tire and eventually sleep, I guess, but it will feel the effects. If it's underfed, malnourishment issues, it is possible a baby can be trained to grab the bottle and feed themselves after a certain age. But that poses risk and danger of choking, etc. Overall, the lack of attention and affection will have an impact on the baby's psyche. For example, whole object relations theory explains one way inconsistent primary caregivers in the early ages affects long-term identity and mental well-being. Having stable emotional support and care allows for stable emotional development. Basically, the cry it out method used to be very popular. Oh, you gon' get up, because if you ignore it, it gets shriller and meaner as they continue to scream. Also, if you continue to do it, neighbors might call cops because of noise complaints. Have a ton of nieces and nephews. I helped raise 2 when they were babies, and it was brutal, but it was eye-opening because that tiny life depends on you. A baby that is left to cry alone grows into an adult that never believes they are cared for or safe, and will have serious difficulties with attachment. You need to make a lot of sacrifices in order to have children. This is just one of them. Please, don't have children until you are willing to make the necessary sacrifices. It is worth it, but only if you want to. I have 2 responses. 1. The reason babies wake up in the middle of the night at first is because they need to eat. They have very small stomachs and need to eat every few hours. When our babies were really little, we would sometimes wake them up at night because it was time for them to eat, get a diaper change, even if they hadn't started crying yet. 2. This is different from letting them cry when they are supposed to be napping during the day. If you know that the baby is fed and has a clean diaper, it's okay to let them cry for a little bit. You don't want to let it go on for too long, but sometimes they cry because they are basically bored. In that case, it's okay to let them cry for a bit. Often, they'll stop crying and go back to sleep on their own after a few minutes. Infants are in a developmental stage Erickson called trust vs mistrust. This means they are going to develop one or the other. They develop a sense of trust with their caregivers when their cries are responded to and their needs are met. They know when something is wrong, a trusted caregiver will be there to help them through it. When no one comes to meet their needs or respond to their cries, they develop mistrust. They learn no one cares about their needs and they will not be responded to when they cry. This can lead to major social emotional problems as they grow and could persist into adulthood. This is aside from the obvious, starving or severe diaper rash, as many have already mentioned. A reminder that comfort is a need, for a baby especially. I think of the study where they isolated baby monkeys to see if they would choose a food source or a comfort source. All of the baby monkeys showed preference for the comfort source. It's the same with us. Comfort is right up there with food and shelter when it comes to our needs. If you try and ignore it, the crying gets even louder and worse, and it continues indefinitely. Believe me, every parent has tried at least once. If you are asking this to know if you could have kids and sleep through the night, don't have kids. Have you ever seen train spotting? How old is the baby? Are we talking newborn or older? For the first few months, you need to be attentive as newborn require a lot more attention, food, etc. As they get older, but still a baby, some parents may try to sleep train their kid. This part of it can involve letting their baby cry it out so they learn to self-soothe. If you don't take care of them when they're babies, they'll resent you and you won't have a relationship with them later. They'll probably disown you when you're older and you'll wonder why. Lots of stupid and wrong answers here. Yes, in their first 4 months you just absolutely attend to all the baby's needs when they cry at night. But starting around 4 months, when they develop the ability to engage in deeper sleep, start solids, and their weight curve starts to plateau, they can start to drop a night feeding. Which is to say it's not metabolically necessary, but the baby doesn't know that, or how to soothe themselves. So you sleep train, which is essentially a form of graduated extinction. Some call this cry it out, but it's progressively longer periods between checking in on crying baby. Eventually they learn how to calm themselves down and fall asleep, and then slowly drop their other 2 night feedings over their first year of life. Parents sleep better. Kids sleep better. Everyone is happier. Have 2 very happy kids aged 2 and 0.5, the former who sleeps 8-7:30 and the latter who just dropped his first night feeding. There are hormonal changes when we cry, more so for babies.